On Saturday, Bitcoin did something that we haven't seen in 9 years. And the last time Bitcoin saw a chain split in 2017, Bitcoin rallied 20x. Now, I know that sounds bullish, but many people are saying that the chain split over the weekend only confirms that the big institutions have captured Bitcoin. Big Bitcoin is in control. So I'm going to dive into this and explore both sides of this complicated story. But I'm sure if you are aware, if you've been following along, you're probably aware of the BIP 110 signaling that happened over the weekend. Well, it got really complicated, or rather, sorry, things escalated very quickly on Saturday afternoon. It was roughly around 3 p.m. on Saturday Eastern time where we saw this, that the Bitcoin chain split. There was, I don't even know what we call legacy Bitcoin, you know, what we know it now, Bitcoin, BTC, and then BIP 110. Well, at block 961,632, there was a fork that happened, BIP 110 fork, or maybe depending on your vantage point, legacy Bitcoin fork. Anyways, here's Rizzo's coverage of it. The BIP 110 Bitcoin soft fork has officially failed. It has rejected block 961,632, splitting off into its own incompatible blockchain. And then things even escalated even more. And BIP 110 fork or chain split lasted literally 2 blocks and has yet to see another block come in. It has been officially stalled. Here is what was happening at the moment. From Luke Dasher goes August at what, around 3:48. Ampool official appears to be attacking Bitcoin. Hold tight, everyone. Goes further. F2 pool joins in the attack. And then this is where, for many people, I think it just started getting hilarious. They go simple mining attack 2. It just so happens that I believe it was the 4th block on legacy Bitcoin, if you want to call that, used the Ocean pool to mine a non-BIP 110 block. And that pretty much officially put the nail in the coffin. But again, giving you the coverage of the BIP 110 advocates. Here's Dathan Ohm, one of the developers. He goes, the Bitcoin network is currently under attack from hostile miners. It just so happened that the final block to really put this to rest was using Ocean. Did kind of prove Ocean's original thesis that, hey, we are giving the miners a choice on what they want to mine. There was a bit of an update from the Ocean team, but before I get into there, here's the last tweet from Dathan, which is update. This was yesterday. It appears that the large mining pools have colluded to turn Bitcoin from money into a toxic data dumping ground by executing a secret hard fork against the Bitcoin node network. The community is working on a proposal for proof of work change to fire the miners. And honestly, I think for a lot of Bitcoiners or pro BIP 110 advocates, this might have been the final straw here. Just the idea of censoring spam, I think, was where this whole kind of saga started, and then a chain split and a proof of work algorithm. I saw a lot of people that I would consider friends that were pro BIP 110 advocates. I think that was like the one step too far. It's like, oh, now they're talking a proof of work change. I didn't really sign up for being a part of a shitcoin version of Bitcoin. And that's their words here. I'm trying to be as objective as possible here. But a couple of friends that were BIP 110 advocates are definitely on Twitter now. I guess you would say maybe doing kind of their postmortems. And again, I don't mean to pick on Hodlnaut here, but I think his tweet here probably sums up a lot of people's views on what happened. So this happened last night, or rather yesterday, and he's basically, again, maybe it's because I'm a talking head. I'm being a little cynical, making it entertaining. He accepted defeat here. Okay. So he goes, I fully accept what happened yesterday. It is sad. I will admit that, but it also feels like a catharsis. Goes back to BIP 148 as Independence Day. And then it says BIP 110 ran with the same playbook. And now he's coining what is it, August 8th as Bitcoin Dependence Day. And then I think here is like the meat of the conversation. He goes, what changed between 2017 and 2026? Not the users. They showed up with the same fire. What changed is everything that grew in the years between: ETFs, treasury companies, custodians holding millions of coins for people who will never touch a node, hash rate concentrated into a handful of pools, building templates for the whole world, capture of the governance of the reference implementation resulting in stark philosophical pivot. Those already celebrating Bitcoin Dependence Day are not simply cheering an outcome they won. And here is where I think a lot of people that were on the BIP 110 side, I think this is a good kind of view of the general grievances. And it goes, in my opinion, and in my heart, legacy Bitcoin is not what I signed up for. Captured, centralized, led by suits. No longer about freedom, sovereignty, or the mission of separating money from state. And no longer about the things that made me a ride or die Bitcoiner for many years. The fire that originally drew me to Bitcoin is still alive in the node runners who supported BIP 110. I will follow it where it goes. As for legacy Bitcoin, I have no interest in it anymore. As freedom project, in my mind, it is now a stock. So BIP 110 officially, it's done. Okay. I was talking to a couple of friends, and I'm not gonna, put their business out there, but they are still kind of viewing this as maybe it's a win. That maybe BIP 110 wasn't the end all be all fix here, but maybe it started a broader conversation, and that maybe down the pipeline there will be something that actually does stop spam. I might view it a little different, but before I get into kind of my view, it is for a lot of people like, okay, very disappointing. If BIP 110 failed after 2 blocks, it's done. Though there's been some contention that maybe miners will continue to mine it, even though if you look at the blockchain, again, it stopped at what, 961. Hold on, I have the number here for you guys. 961. Wait, is this the right one? No, this one. Oh, now actually mempool guide just changed. Okay, so officially it's done. So I was using mempool guide to show us the BIP 110 blocks, and it was 9613. Wait, let me get the number. 961633 was the final block, at least what mempool guide was showing. Now it looks like it's back onto legacy Bitcoin, if you want to call it. But going into this a little more, I think this is where it got really interesting for everyone. Simple mining using the ocean mining pool blocked or mine the final block. And here is their tweet about it. And they go, we mined block 961,634 using Ocean's datum protocol. The block didn't signal support for BIP 110. Support peaked at 2.6%, while the proposal needed 55%. Hash rate is a vote you cannot fake, and we decided the proposal wasn't worth following. Ocean's datum protocol gave us the ability to make that choice, and at the block level, without relying on the pool to make it for us, we chose not to signal, and the chain extended on our block. Bitcoin mining is still decentralized enough that individual operators can participate in decisions that matter. The system absorbed the noise and kept producing blocks. So I was using mempool.guide this morning, literally before I went on the show. It was still showing the BIP 110 chain. Wasn't updated. It was blocked. It was stopped at, again, 961,633. Now, as you can see, it's back to legacy Bitcoin, I guess would be the framing here. It's back to Bitcoin. All right. So Bitcoin, non-BIP 110 is Bitcoin. All right. That's where we stand here. Now, there's obviously some... Oh, I didn't pull it up. Sorry, guys. There's obviously, I think, a lot to take away from this. And, I already saw someone in the chat basically saying, like, we're bought and paid for, we're big Bitcoin, whatever. I don't think that that's the case, but hey, you guys can say what you want about me. It's fine. What I did kind of view, I think maybe the big takeaway is what Simple Mining put here, which is, to me, probably the biggest thing here. Support peaked at 2.6%, while the proposal needed 55%. Look, you may have been a BIP 110 advocate. And again, personally, I've been saying this on the show throughout this whole saga. You guys were trying to get me to cover BIP 110 more. Like, what is your stance, Opti? And I maybe flippantly was like, I don't think spam is going to kill Bitcoin. And people are like, oh, it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen in a few years or something like that. And I think what we saw was pretty clear. There just wasn't consensus around BIP 110. As everyone is saying in the community, and I think both sides can agree to this, is like, I don't think anyone likes spam. It's just, how do you deal with that spam? That is the big conversation. And for most people, I think ideologically, we may have aligned with BIP 110 in terms of, hey, I want Bitcoin to be simply monetary transactions. But it does get into a slippery slope conversation. I know the BIP 110 guys would be like, no, it's a slippery slope conversation to not stop the spam. But when you quote unquote start censoring spam, it also sets a bad precedent. The small minority of people can start censoring and make changes on Bitcoin. And I think that's what everyone was really not agreeing with in terms of being pro BIP 110. And I know a lot of people are saying, at least this is kind of how the conversation evolved, that, oh, even my friend Hodlnaut was saying like, oh, now Bitcoin is completely controlled by the miners. And I do kind of agree with the tweet that Saylor was putting out over the weekend, which goes something like this. And this is kind of my view of what happened as well. And shouts out to Dylan Leclerc. He followed it up and I think made it more clear. So Saylor tweeted, Bitcoin worked exactly as designed. BIP 110 was free to fork and the network was free not to follow. The result was decisive. About 99.85% of Bitcoin's hash power stayed with Bitcoin. The BIP 110 branch mined only 2 blocks and is already more than 80 blocks behind. Hodlnaut again goes in and he's like, so you're saying miners control Bitcoin? Saylor goes, no, I'm saying virtually all the miners, exchanges, custodians, wallets, holders, markets, and economic infrastructure chose Bitcoin over BIP 110. Nobody controls Bitcoin. Consensus emerges from the network, and the network has spoken. I think that is the big takeaway from this. And I know a lot of people are probably going to be like, oh, Opti's BIP 110, they're bought and paid for. They want their centralized chain to just go up. But the last part, I think, is the most important part. A lot of this conversation that we saw started to evolve towards pure node count. Like, oh, look, not BIP 110 nodes have 20% of the nodes, which the math could be a little debatable. There were some duplicate nodes. I saw some data showing that I think it was most of those nodes were duplicates, in the sense that people with the same IP address were running multiple implementations so that the node count seemed higher, versus what we saw happening on Bitcoin Legacy, whatever you want to call it. Majority of the economic weight just didn't move. And that's not just the miners. As we saw, it was something, I think on Friday when I covered this to kind of give you an update, it was about 2.5% of the hash rate moved over towards a BIP 110 signaling. Obviously, they needed 55%. There is the conversation that, oh, the mining pools just colluded to not switch over. And one of my friends on Twitter, Jeremy, he said something that was super interesting. He's like, look, I think the reason this fork kind of failed is because most people are viewing it in the only reason to fork Bitcoin is if things won't work tomorrow, not if things aren't going to work in the future. Now, maybe that is a slippery slope amongst itself. But again, this isn't just about node count from, the Bitcoin plebs out there or the mining hash rate. It's about the entire ecosystem. And most of the wallets didn't move. Most of the exchanges didn't move. The majority of the hash rate didn't move. The majority of the nodes didn't move towards a BIP 110 signaling either. So it does still need consensus to make changes on Bitcoin. And even though that 55% threshold was lower than what was expected on the 2017 hard fork, it wasn't anywhere near the threshold. So BIP 110 kind of was DOA. It was DOA from the start. And look, you may get mad at me on that, but hey, now it's officially done. BIP 110 is over. Now, Dylan, I think, did a really good tweet here as well. And he goes, RE BIP 110 postmortem. Miners don't control Bitcoin and pools don't control miners. Pools are payout coordinators for thousands of individual operators who can repoint hash rate elsewhere in 10 minutes. A pool signaling against its miners' interest just loses the hash rate. Miners exchange hash rate for block rewards, then sell Bitcoin to pay energy bills and fiat. If there's minimal economic support behind a fork, the rewards can't be monetized and mining it is burning money. Hash rate follows the buy side because that's how they stay in business. That's what economic nodes mean. Now, I did see an interesting post here from Parman. And again, I'm not trying to pick on these Bitcoiners like they're friends. They've been in the trenches with us. But he made an interesting post, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. But the TLDR was essentially, node counts, the short of it, I forget that not everyone knows TLDR. The short of his post was essentially node count don't matter. What matters is economic nodes. And we're like, wait, that's literally what the legacy Bitcoin core side was saying the whole time. It doesn't matter how many nodes are implemented. It matters how much of the economic throughput is going through these nodes. And the way I was talking, I think I was having this conversation with Luke, and I was trying to explain it to him because he was kind of on the fence. He was like, look, I'm more ideologically aligned with the BIP 110 idea. Making all of the jokes about the island, etc., and some of the more prominent Bitcoiners being associated with shitcoiny stuff, and some of the more prominent developers being woke. And I was trying to explain to him, I'm like, look, node count doesn't necessarily matter. Like if you just spin up a Bitcoin not 110 node, and you send, say, I don't know, 0.1 or 1 Bitcoin. We'll go 1 Bitcoin. And your node simply verifies that Bitcoin, and now it doesn't do anything beyond that. And that's what the majority of the BIP 110 nodes were doing. Again, I'm generalizing. Then that doesn't have economic weight moving forward. Yes, you use those rules to enforce your Bitcoin, but if you are competing with, say, another node that has 10 Bitcoin that is constantly transacting with that 10 Bitcoin, that shows the network, they want the Bitcoin core rules, and they're propagating that. That's the economic weight idea. And as we saw, the majority of the Bitcoin industry, the Bitcoin economy, however you want to frame it, they didn't feel the need to switch over to BIP 110, and BIP 110 was stillborn after 2 blocks. Now, that leads to the conversation of, was Bitcoin or is Bitcoin captured by the institutions? Personally, I don't really see that as the case. Yes, I know, Wall Street's here. Larry Fink is in Bitcoin. Big Bitcoin is in control is the funniest meme I've seen in a while. The suits are here. What I would basically say to all that is Hodonot does have a point that there has been a change from 2017 to 2026, and there has been a lot of infrastructure built on top of Bitcoin. Now, do I necessarily mean that they have captured Bitcoin when I acknowledge that? No, I just was viewing this, and I think this really popped up in my head after Matt Hill was on, I believe that was Thursday, where he said something on the lines of, you would think that the miners would want the entirety of all Bitcoiners to maintain the ecosystem. Thus, they would signal for BIP 110 and nothing would break. I was trying to think through it, and maybe I should have vocalized it a little more. I kind of view it that it just seemed like the majority of the ecosystem, the majority of the industry didn't really want the change, and therefore there was more of a risk to signal BIP 110. All the infrastructure, all the wallet, the exchanges, majority of the miners, they're like, hey, look, we're in this Mexican standoff, and I don't think that BIP 110 is the correct way to deal with this. And thus, nothing happened. It was stillborn. It was DOA. It ended right when it started. And if you were off Bitcoin this weekend or off Bitcoin Twitter and you didn't do anything, nothing really changed for you. You woke up Saturday. Here, you guys want to hear how my BIP 110 kind of story happened? It was Saturday. I think I probably woke up a little late, like a 10, 11. I'm like, it's Saturday. don't really feel like doing anything. So I pretty much woke up, went to the bathroom, drank some water, drank some electrolytes. And then I was like, I'm kind of tired. I'm going to roll back in bed. And then I woke up at like 3:30 or something. Obviously, my node, I haven't updated my node since, 27? And that was kind of what I've been saying for the whole time. The whole argument was going, oh, you either update to Core 30 or you run Pro BIP 110 knots. And I'm like, well, what about the third option of just like not upgrading your node? That's still a viable option. This is not a dichotomy where it's either update to this or that. There's also the third option of not upgrading. So my node wasn't upgraded, right? So I wake up at like 3. I think it was like 3:30, maybe 3:45 or something. And I go on Twitter. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's about 3 o'clock. I knew the BIP 110 signaling period was starting roughly around 3. I'm like, okay, let me check it. I'm literally in bed. I'm like, let me check this out. And I go on. And it's like, oh, BIP 110 stalled after 2 blocks. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Cool. Put my phone down, roll over, and go back to bed. That's how my learning of BIP 110 happened. I literally was taking a nap. I woke up. I saw it was done, and just enjoyed my day. Well, rather enjoyed my nap a little more. So, I think. Let me see. I think BIP 110 executed poorly, but imagine if Bitcoin went to BIP 110 today, it would make a statement. Whatever BTC Core dev sold out like Cypher and Matrix. Oh, well, let's make more. Yeah, maybe. We could all do what ifs, should have, could have, would have, but the majority of the Bitcoin industry obviously didn't choose BIP 110. So we forked, there was a fork. BIP 110's done. Bitcoin is legacy. Bitcoin is the real Bitcoin. Though I have seen some like screenshots of a lot of the BIP 110 advocates. And actually, I do want to go back to something I forgot to mention here. This tweet is very interesting. The Dath and Ohm tweet is very interesting. It appears large mining pools have colluded to turn Bitcoin from money into a toxic data dumping ground by executing a secret hard fork against Bitcoin node network. This is like some crazy level reframing. And I'm not calling Dathan crazy or BIP 110's crazy, but it wasn't a secret hard fork at all. Like, there was nothing secret about this. The majority of the economic node, or the majority of the economic weight, again, it wasn't just the miners that are in control here, okay? It is the miners, the infrastructure, the majority of holders. They didn't want BIP 110. So I know a lot of people are saying, oh, the miners colluded against the BIP 110, plebs, the node runners. I don't think that is a fair reframing. The majority of the Bitcoin nodes did not activate for BIP 110. Again, even if we're being gracious on the node count, 80% of the Bitcoin network just ignored this. 97% of the hash power, the hash rate, didn't signal for it. I'm guessing I didn't see any big exchange, whether they're a shitcoin adjacent exchange or a Bitcoin exchange, Bitcoin only exchange, put in their weight behind BIP 110. I think as a whole, all of those, again, miners, node runners, exchanges, and infrastructure, they all were okay with Bitcoin Core. Or rather, the legacy chain here. So I know a lot of the framing has been, oh, Bitcoin miners colluded against node runners. That's not really the vantage point that I saw happening. It was a small minority of the node runners that wanted to fork and force that consensus on the majority of, force that rule change on the majority of the Bitcoin network. Now, you can say I'm bought and paid for, whatever, I'm a courtard, whatever you want to say about it. But I've been, I think, pretty objective throughout this whole process, and I didn't get too emotional on any side of the matter. Again, because my default view, and I've been saying this for years here, is I just don't update my node for any reason unless it's a critical reason. Unless there is a critical vulnerability, do I feel the need to update my node. And I think that's probably where my I don't know if I would say my laziness, my objection throughout this whole thing was. I'm like, I just think it's a false dichotomy. I don't have to update my node. Like, why is the force that I have to update my node? So I just never did. And throughout the whole side, this whole argument, each side was obviously devolved into name calling. It was a pretty brutal civil war. Well, obviously, I don't think this is going to be over. It does seem like some of the BIP 110 more hardcore advocates are still digging in their heels. And I did see Roughnecks, you know, they did one tweet yesterday essentially saying, oh, we're going to pause our mining. And then I saw them this morning say they were going to continue mining it. And as I was looking at the mempool.guide this morning, it essentially said, and that's why I pulled it up, but then they just changed it. It said it would take about 1.8 days for a block to come in. So even if BIP 110 continued to be mined and people were continuing to use the BIP 110 chain, that would mean they would get about 1 block a day. A lot lower than the 6 blocks per hour. So again, it's DOA. Maybe I'm being flippant about it, but I think maybe the bigger conversation for me now is, and this is in the context of what we saw with the cold card hack. Again, it's been a pretty crazy week in Bitcoin land over here. We had the cold card hack. We had the BIP 110 fork fail. Clarity Act failed. All within a matter of days. It's been one of the classic views of you know, sometimes nothing happened. What's it? You know, sometimes nothing happens for a decade, and then sometimes decades happen in a week or whatever the framing is. You know what I'm saying. Opti is a scissor flickerman. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. I need to rewatch Hunger Games. But the network made its choice. Look, do I think Bitcoin's been co-opted? Personally, no. Have I been vocal about the fact that I'm a little uncertain and concerned about the institutions coming in? Obviously. It made me feel weird when BlackRock came in. I don't like to necessarily cheer on Larry Fink, but hey, we're a news show. Larry Fink's been buying a lot of Bitcoin. The ETF inflows are a new avenue of liquidity, which does drive the Bitcoin price. Am I a fan of the Bitcoin treasury companies? I don't hold any of them, but that is a new development in Bitcoin. Do I like the politicians trying to regulate Bitcoin? Not at all. I'm kind of happy the Clarity Act has been delayed. At least that's the official statement. I'll give you all the update on what's going on with it, but it failed. You can pretty much assume it's over. But these are all new developments in Bitcoin, and as a Bitcoin show, we are covering what's going on. So yes, there is things in Bitcoin that maybe I don't want to say didn't foresee, that I'm not really the biggest fan about, but all of this is new developments in Bitcoin. This is where we currently stand in the story. And I truly still believe that Bitcoin is decentralized enough, whether that's node runners, miners, exchanges, wallet providers, that it can withstand the pressure from Wall Street. Now, I know a lot of people are framing this as like, oh, Bitcoin just got co-opted by Wall Street and all the big interest of the institutions, of politicians. And I really don't think that that's what happened at all. I just don't think the majority of the Bitcoin ecosystem wanted the BIP 110 chain or the BIP 110 rule set. I think most of us are ideologically aligned with the idea of no one liking spam. But I think even the BIP 110 rule change, then the developers for BIP 110 admitted that this doesn't even actually stop spam. And then on the very last day, we saw like BIP 110 had multiple ways of spamming on the chain. And so it just proved that, hey, if this was about spam, this just wasn't the implementation. And then there was a couple of bugs, and it just, the idea may have been good, but the execution was flawed. And so my silver lining of this is hopefully we can get the spam argument behind us. Obviously, again, in the context of the cold card hack, I think we might have some bigger issues here, like maybe how to secure our Bitcoin, maybe privacy as, you know, on I don't know, maybe not layer 1, but on layer 2S protocols. Like I really, and I've said this flippantly, and I've been kind of trolling about it on Twitter. I don't think that spam is going to kill Bitcoin. Now, obviously, I'm not a developer. I'm not a Bitcoin core code writer. I just view it from a simple heuristic. It's like if spam kills Bitcoin, then Bitcoin is not what we thought it was. Now, again, I don't do spam. I don't partake in ordinals or runes or NFTs. And I don't like that there's graffiti on the blockchain, just to use that framing. But I don't think that it is necessarily going to be the end of Bitcoin. So hopefully, now that this is behind us, we can start to refocus our energies towards something more productive. That would be my main takeaway from this. As we saw with the cold card hack, yes, it seems like frontier AI models were able to find a vulnerability in cold card that led to people losing their Bitcoin. But in the wake of that, we saw that like the Bitcoin Red Team was created, where Bitcoiners were using these AI frontiers to look at code vulnerabilities. And it seems in the, a week, on the second week since that, I think 10 days or something since that, it seems like there has been, yes, there's been a couple of like critical vulnerabilities found, a la the BTC Pay server one that we covered last week. But for the most part, it seems like most of the code that we are using, the infrastructure code that we all rely on, is pretty well coded. Yes, there's been some bugs released, and some may be more critical than others, but the network is only going to get stronger. And I think part of this process that was really cool to see, and I know a lot of the BIP 110 guys, I saw, again, I don't want to pick on anyone here. I'm trying to be as objective as possible. But did you guys see the stream of, Mechanic and Canute? And I think Luke Royals was in that, and Crater and Luke DeWolf. And they were covering the saga. And then the Simple Mining Ocean block came in. And it was like, oh, wait, now Ocean's partaking in the attack. So as a mining pool, I think Ocean did what they said they were going to do, which is, hey, we are going to leave this up to the miners, excuse me, to put what they want in their blocks. There was the BIP 110 pool, there was the legacy pool, and the Bitcoin miners that were using Ocean basically were given the option of which chain do you want to follow. And, I guess maybe poetically, it was the Ocean block. Again, it was 961634, I believe, which was the final nail in the coffin for the BIP 110 chain. So now the real interesting thing here is the last time we saw a fork or a chain split, again, was for Bcash and Bitcoin in 2017. And we all know how the end of 2017 ended. It was absolutely magnificent bull run. Now, I've been praying for a bull run again. Now, we all know history doesn't repeat, it often rhymes. But a boy can wish, a boy can hope. Maybe, just maybe, this is officially the Bitcoin bottom. And I am going to continue on this. So I got a short clip of Arthur Hayes, and hey, Arthur Hayes, yes, kind of a shitcoiner, but short clip. I think we're all feeling it, guys. I think the bottom's in. Can we all admit the Bitcoin bottom was in? So he's got a little clip about the Bitcoin bottom being in. And then I am going to give you just the final postmortem on the Clarity Act. And that'll be today's show. So first break, and I'll be right back. Here's the part that nobody says out loud. Buying Bitcoin on an exchange and leaving it there isn't buying Bitcoin. It's buying an IOU. And the last decade has been a masterclass in what happens when those exchanges don't deliver on their promises.
Bitcoin Well is a self-custody Bitcoin platform. That means that when you buy Bitcoin, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet. You actually own it from the very first transaction. They're available both in the United States and Canada. Pricing is transparent, straightforward, and no nonsense. And if you're buying a larger amount of Bitcoin, Bitcoin Well Infinite gives you concierge-level support through a dedicated executive Bitcoin advisor, premium help for when it actually matters.
You can also stack a little extra through the referral and wishing well rewards. A nice bonus on top of the owning your own Bitcoin thing. So go to bitcoinwell.com/simply and sign up for the Bitcoin Well portal today and buy Bitcoin you actually own. Paper burns, paper floods, paper fades. If your seed phrase is written on paper, it's not really backed up. It's waiting to disappear. Stampseed's DIY kit lets you hammer your seed words directly into commercial grade titanium. Fireproof, crush-proof, waterproof, and permanent. Once your words are in the metal, they aren't going anywhere. Use code SIMPLY at stampseed.com for 15% off anything in the store. That's stampseed.com, code SIMPLY. Okay. Hold on. People don't like the fact that I think the bottom's in funny. All right, current Bitcoin price is 63,870. Wait. Bitcoin price is $63,870 per Bitcoin. The discount from all-time high is 49.4%. The market cap is 1.28 trillion, and the block height is currently 961,900. All right, so I saw the short clip of Arthur Hayes. Again, you may or may not like Arthur Hayes, but generally I truly enjoy his macro takes on things. So this is a short clip. It will kind of relate into where we currently stand in the Middle East. But the takeaway is, I think 60K-ish, 57K was the bottom. Though I will give you, I guess, maybe my tea leaf reading of where we stand after this. So let's watch this short clip, and then I will chat about it a little bit.
Firming up. And so if we get sort of a dog shit ceasefire between the U.S. And Iran, and things slowly improve in terms of the amount of ships that go through the strait, and we don't progress to an escalatory World War III and people just bombing each other left, right, and center, then I think that on balance, Bitcoin probably bottomed at 60,000. And myself and Maelstrom will turn a bit more constructive on risk going forward.
Well, I don't know if you guys are following along in the Middle East. I know, like, side tangent here. I know we all have a bit of news fatigue here, and this show is just the culmination of this, okay? It's like Clarity, Sailor buying and selling Bitcoin, the war in the Middle East, what's the other one? Bitcoin treasury companies. That's I feel like it's been a year and that's all we've been talking about. Or sorry, and BIP 110, spam, not spam. 5 topics have basically covered the majority of all of the Bitcoin news. And currently we're all just like, can we move to the next chapter of the Bitcoin news cycle? But anyways, leaning into one of these. So the current, I guess, status of the Middle East, and maybe some of you guys aren't going to like this, but if you're following along on what's happening in the Middle East, what Arthur Hayes basically said there, how do you frame it? Like a dog shit ceasefire in the Middle East between the U.S. and Iran. So from the latest that I can relate to you is apparently like Friday night, or maybe it was Friday afternoon, we were getting reports that the military leaders and the Pentagon we're essentially saying that the U.S. we need to withdraw from Iraq. And from diving in a little deeper, it looked like we are basically running out of defense missiles. We're out of missiles. So even though Trump says he doesn't want to finish or, withdraw from the Middle East, again, we're gonna destroy them. I think it was Friday. Wasn't it Friday? It's like, this is going to be the worst bombardment since World War II, which is like, wait, are they dropping the big one? Oh man, crazy. We're getting pressure from our military advisors in the U.S. that we basically need to withdraw from Iraq. Now, we'll see if some other stuff kind of comes out later today. But I did see this morning a report coming out that Iran basically said, hey, we are no longer going to negotiate with the U.S. We are basically just going to try to wait out Trump until after he's gone from office. So it seems like there's no moving forward. There's no negotiations. I'm sure Trump will come out and say, hey, Iran wants to negotiate. They really want to negotiate with us. But put really, really kind of, cynically, and I know some of you guys might not like it, but it's from on-ground reports, it looks like the U.S. lost this so far to Iran, and we're probably going to pull out. Now, what does that mean for the global macro geopolitical scenario? Well, I don't know. I don't have reports that if we pull out of the, Iranian escalation, does that mean that the Strait of Hormuz will close? I know there's been a lot of rerouting around the Strait of Hormuz, so maybe the global oil pipelines global oil infrastructure won't be as affected. Maybe oil will start moving through the Strait of Hormuz. Maybe some oil will move around the Strait of Hormuz. But if we do pull out, then I think all of the uncertainty of a World War III type scenario goes off the table. Maybe oil prices don't get as crazy. We do have to bring in what's going on in Japan. So there's still macro uncertainties going on. And then I think using more heuristics, everything we've seen happening right now in terms of just in Bitcoin is really kind of proving to me that the bottom is in. We see Clarity Act fail, Bitcoin pumps. We see a Bitcoin hack happen among some of the most hardcore Bitcoiners, Bitcoin pumps. Bitcoin price, again, it's currently at 63, but it's looking pretty strong right now, where personally I'm like, I think we're out of the woods. And not going to name any names, but some of your favorite, maybe not so favorite bears are saying, hey, we're DCAing back in right now. Bottom's in. I'm like, all right, I was vindicated. I was right, guys. Bitcoin bottom, I'm pretty sure, is in. Now, in terms of price action, what should you be watching right now? And what would, in my mind, confirm that the bear market is basically on the way out? I know the price is roughly at 63 right now, but if we make our way up to the high 65s, maybe kiss 66, then I'm pretty convinced that we're going into the 70Ks. Now, if this week we break down under 62K, then maybe we get back into the high 50s again, and that would officially be the final end of the last touchdown for the bear market. Though historically, August and September aren't necessarily the best months for Bitcoin returns, and that would line up for a lot of people to say, oh, bear market's in October. But as I've been saying, and my view of this is, we got the all-time high about a month before when we expect it. So I would argue that we'll probably see the bottom be about a month or so before everyone expects it, which means it's probably not going to be in October. It could have been already. Maybe it's in August. Anyways, I say all that to say that even if you disagree with me that you think the bear market bottom hasn't been put in yet, and we still have a little more pain, I would venture to say, and I would argue, that you most likely want to get your position before October. I think the institutions will probably start front running you, and it won't bottom in October like everyone's saying. It won't play out exactly in the 4-year cycle expectation of bear market in October, I think I'm pretty convinced that we're going to be grinding up from here. And again, only in hindsight will we be able to say we knew exactly when the bottom was, but it's the gut instinct here. All right. What's the source? I am the source. This is what I think is happening. And either way, we're at the end of the bear market. You know, it's what, a month? It could be over now, tops 2 months. And that's what everyone's kind of been saying, but I'm just convinced it's on the way up. All right. Everything I'm seeing right now is making me get like bull market vibes. We've seen a lot of bad news, and what has Bitcoin done? It's pumped. Usually you would expect that if we were still in the depths of a bear market, any amount of bad news, even the slightest amount of bad news, and Bitcoin would dump. We're not seeing that. We're seeing the inverse happen. We're seeing the heuristic of if Bitcoin is pumping on bad news, then the bear market's probably done. So that's the levels I'm watching this week. If we break under 62, I'm wrong. We still have some more pain. If we do start to break up to like 66, I think we can all, I know it's not going to feel that much better. We're still going to be like, okay, cool. 66. We're still 40% off all time high, 40-ish% off all time high. But I think it would be fairly safe to say that we're on the way back up. So that's what I'm watching this week in terms of price. Obviously, we will keep you updated on any new news developments going forward. But that's, I think, the levels we should be watching right now. If we break under 62, more pain, cheaper sats. If we break above 66, I think we will teleport to the 70K, and then we know we're on our way. All right, guys. So that's kind of my view on where, if we've bottomed or not. I am going to give you, hopefully, the final update on the Clarity Act. Again, as I said on Friday, it failed. They didn't get the vote in. So Clarity Act delayed officially, as I mentioned on Friday. But here's the latest, at least hopium, on whether the Clarity Act is going to get pushed through. So I'll cover that for maybe a shorter show here on Monday. I'll be right back after this break.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, Ledin. Here's something most Bitcoin holders never figure out until it's too late. You're sitting on wealth you can't touch without selling. Ledin fixes that. Bitcoin-backed loans. You keep your stack, you get cash. And they just introduced their lowest rates ever. No complexity, no fine print. The larger the loan, the lower the rate. These new rates apply to all new loans, refinances, and renewals. You'll see all the rates up front before you apply. The new, lower rates come with Ledin's gold standard protection. Your Bitcoin remains custodied and is never lent out for interest. Perfect 8-year track record of keeping clients' assets safe. Auto top-ups, LTV alerts, and partial repayments to keep you in control. Repay whenever you want with zero penalties or monthly payments. Ledin's perfect $10 billion track record through every market cycle in the last 8 years speaks for itself. Don't choose between a great rate and the safety of your Bitcoin. Get both at Ledin. If you ever thought, what happens to my Bitcoin if something happens to me? Or what happens if I lose my phone? You're not alone. For a lot of people, the biggest barrier to self-custody isn't buying Bitcoin. It's the fear of making a mistake. And that's why I like Bitkey, and I recommend it to my friends and family. Bitkey is a Bitcoin wallet built for real life, not just for day one, but for everything that happens in between. Lost devices, upgrades, accidents, and long-term ownership. There's no seed phrase to write down and worry about losing, and no single point of failure that can lock you out of your Bitcoin forever. What really stands out about Bitkey is the peace of mind. Recovery is built in, inheritance is built in. It's a complete self-custody system built by the team behind Square and Cash App, designed to make holding your own Bitcoin simpler and safer. Take self-custody of your Bitcoin today using Bitkey. Go to bitkey.world and use promo code SIMPLY for 10% off your new Bitkey. That's bitkey.world, promo code SIMPLY. I want to give a shout out to our partner, HIVE Digital Technologies. Fueled by clean energy across 3 continents, HIVE runs dual engines, Bitcoin mining and AI compute. Their AI platform is ranked #1 in the world for network performance, and it's doing something bigger than compute. It's accelerating human discovery, the science, the breakthroughs, pushing humanity further and faster. Listed on the NASDAQ with the ticker HIVE. Catch the latest buzz at HIVE Digital Tech on X or hivedigitaltech.com.
You secured your Bitcoin, but did you secure your devices too? They're still broadcasting your location and digital footprint. GPS, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cell, 5G, EMF, all of it is leaking. Escape Zone fixes that. Their Faraday bags block every signal your device emits, so you decide when you're detectable, not the grid. Built for Bitcoiners who know sovereignty isn't just your wallet. It's your phone, your hardware wallet, your keys, and your entire digital life. Go to escapezone.com/simply and use code SIMPLY for 10% off. That's escapezone.com/simply, code SIMPLY. All right, guys. So I think it was Friday when I covered the Clarity Act stuff, but this dropped right when the show ended. Okay. So here's Eleanor Terrett. This was the latest update. Wait. Yeah. I guess I would say the latest update after yesterday's show, which was new. Leader Thune's office is telling the crypto industry leaders today that the majority leader still intends to file cloture on the motion to proceed to the Clarity Act before lawmakers leave for August recess, which was basically like 2 hours from then. The move would tee up a vote on the Clarity Act in September and is being viewed as a positive signal that the GOP leadership intends to make the bill a priority when the Senate returns. But there's work to be done between now and then. Negotiators will need to find the votes that currently aren't there, starting with finding a path forward to resolve the disagreement over yield, which has reemerged as a front and center issue following the Wall Street Journal op-eds, and as banks have made significant inroads in persuading Republican members that the language needs to be changed. And of course, securing a palatable bipartisan ethics agreement. Still no word from the White House, sources say, though there's clearly less urgency to respond now than there was earlier in the week. She followed this up on Saturday with new Majority Leader Thune filed cloture on the motion to proceed to the Clarity Act. It will be voted on by the Senate after they return at 2:15 p.m. on Tuesday, September 15th, as agreed to by the Senate this morning. So on Saturday morning, it looks like they filed cloture. And then when they come back from their break in about a month, I guess then we will see if it gets through, right? Now, following this up, she goes, there is now officially a cloture vote on the calendar now for the Clarity Act. But as I said yesterday, there are still big kinks left to iron out. So looks like there will be a vote pushed back to September 15th on the Clarity Act. I mean, here is like a good take or a good tweet here. I'm using bitcoinfoundation.org, but it's Brian Armstrong. He says, the Senate didn't move the Clarity Act this week. That's disappointing, but I appreciate Leader John Thune's commitment to bringing the bill up in September. After all the work that's gone into this legislation, everyone wants it done so they can move forward. I guess. But anyway, short of it, Clarity Act officially was delayed. We were saying that last week. I think it's becoming even more official that the Clarity Act it's done. Now, I could be wrong. Again, I wasn't really expecting them to actually push the closure through before the August recess. And now it's like, okay, I guess they did, but now it's going to be voted on in September. I don't think. I think this is hopium. I think this is continuing to push the carrot out in front of the quote unquote crypto industry. I'm really bearish on the Clarity Act even passing. And further, I don't even think I'm that bullish on the Clarity Act being a good bill at all. It's looking like it's just a complete surveillance bill. It's looking like it doesn't really do anything for Bitcoin. The one hope that everyone had here is the number go upside, that, yeah, maybe once it passes, if it passed, you know, before this August recess, then maybe when the institutions finally feel a little safe, they are going to deploy a lot of capital and we can get back to Valhalla. We can get back to the Bitcoin price pumping. But again, the silver lining, like Clarity Act fails and Bitcoin price pumps. Like maybe we didn't need the Clarity Act at all. CFTC and the SEC joint memorandum is the best clarity we're going to get. I stand by that. But hey, look, as of now, if you believe the politicians, if you believe the political process, they will vote on it September 15th. So that gives us a month to hopefully not talk about the Clarity Act. All right, we get we at least get that reprieve here, that this is the final nail on the Clarity Act story. In a month, we'll see if something happens. We'll come back, give us a little break from it. It's probably going to fail. We'll probably get a vote in. Like, all right, here's what I think is going to happen. I think they will in September get a vote from the Senate. We will probably get a Senate vote on the Clarity Act. I don't think the GOP will get the Democrat votes they need. Again, they need 60 votes. I think that means they need about 7 Democrat votes. I don't think they will get those votes in, especially considering that the midterms are starting to heat up. And I think the prevailing view from a lot of people is that the Democrats are going to win the midterms. And therefore, if they do win the midterms, they are not going to go along with anything that the GOP wants, that the Republicans want. And so maybe just in spite of the Trump-led GOP, they will just not get those 7 votes for the Clarity Act. It will stall officially, but we will get a final tally for the Clarity Act. So we will get some votes in on that. And, you know, from there, maybe as an industry, we can start to see, who we want to lobby, who we want to vote for as an industry. And honestly, last thing, I'm going on tangents here. I'm having a little fun on Monday. The one thing Elizabeth Warren said that I totally agree with is, yes, Bitcoiners are going to be lobbying Congress. Yeah, there is a midterm coming up. And I'm sure I'm not a one-issue voter, but if you are a one-issue voter, they're not going to be like, you know, the Democrats vote for the Clarity Act, Senate vote does get in. That's definitely going to give a lot of ammunition to Bitcoiners, as they already have ammunition against Bitcoiners or crypto because of the Trump meme coins. Like, I think the next thing we're going to see is we'll probably get the Clarity Act vote in September if they're holding up their end of the bargain here. It could also just be them, you know, holding the carrot out so that they can continue the cycle, continue kind of the goodwill of the crypto industry before the midterm fallout. But we get a vote on the Clarity Act through the Senate. No, well, not through, but we just get an official vote on it. And then we are going to see a storm of anti-Bitcoin rhetoric coming out of the Elizabeth Warren camp of Democrats going into the midterms. That will probably be one of the, how do I say it? That'll probably be one of the topics that the Democrats will come out and use as a pitchfork to try to character assassin a lot of the Republicans in the midterms. I'm guessing that's just like my best guess of what's going to happen. And we can start to tally. We can start to get an idea of who's for and who's against Bitcoin. And again, I don't think Bitcoiners as an industry, even as a lobbying group, are big enough to really go against the more traditional lobbying groups. But I know the Bitcoin journalists out there in particular, I'm going to be interested to see what the Rage does and who they endorse and don't endorse. And, you know, seeing the, like, Alex Thorne's Galaxy Research, seeing the table of who's against the Clarity Act, who is for the Clarity Act. That's probably going to be the most interesting stuff. We can finally put some yes and no votes on people in Washington, D.C. You could say maybe some targets on some people's backs, metaphorically, of course. But I think Clarity Act's done. I've been saying it for a while. The more I saw the Clarity Act become delayed at week after week, oh, it's this week it's going to happen. Oh, no, sorry, it's next week that's going to happen. I just was convinced it's not going to happen. And maybe that's a good thing. But I think it's cooked. I think it's done. Now, again, what do I know? Maybe there's some... Maybe we do get the 7 Democrat votes we needed for the Clarity Act to pass in September. But I would venture to guess that Clarity Act's done. And I think most Bitcoiners, like most hardcore Bitcoiners, are probably okay with that. The politicians that are trying to seduce Bitcoiners maybe aren't so happy about it. I know Senator Lummis is probably going to be really mad. She's really done a lot of good work, tried a lot, spent a lot of energy, a lot of hours to try to get this pushed through. As we heard her say, it's been the hardest thing to do. There's been a lot of pushback, but I think Clarity Act's done. I think it is over. And it was a good try. It's a good try. Anyways, guys, shorter show today. We will be back to kind of normal programming this week. I didn't look at my entire schedule this morning, but maybe we can get some experts in on the show later on in the show. Maybe we can get some pretty cool guests to kind of get some takes on various different news stories going on, whether it's the cold card stuff, maybe even another, BIP 110, Bitcoin, postmortem, Clarity Act updates. We'll see. Hopefully not Clarity Act, though. I really did want Alex Thorne to come on this week. That would have been cool. But anyways, you already know we're back to the grind. It's Monday, so we will be here Monday through Friday at 12:40 p.m. Eastern time. Keep you up to date on all the Bitcoin news. All right, guys. So I hope you have a good rest of your day. It's been a shorter one today. The news is kind of a little slow right now, but we show up, we give you a show anyways. All right, guys. So on that note, I hope you have a good rest of your day. I hope, all the things you get outside, get some sun, get some exercise. Actually, one last postmortem on the BIP 110 thing, because it really does kind of go into what I usually say on the sign off, which is, get outside and touch some grass. I think one of the things that I probably failed to mention is, like, Twitter's not real life, all right? As we saw for the last year or two, there's been a huge divide on Bitcoin Twitter. Those that are for BIP 110 and knots, and those that are for core, core tards, or however you want to call it. But as we saw, yes, the conversation for Bitcoin happened on Twitter. But we can't assume that the conversation, the echo chambers that we find ourselves in, is a good summary for the entire Bitcoin ecosystem. There's a lot of Bitcoiners that aren't on Twitter. And this is why I'm usually kind of trolly at the end of the show. And it's just like, hey, the guy you're arguing with on Twitter, like, he's going to be there when you get back. So just sign off, go live your life. And part of what we saw happen is, we are still in this era right now where there's still almost a Bitcoin community. I know it's been fractured. I know, like, the community as we once knew it in 2017, 2018, 2020, it's like no longer there. And for most people, the way they are going to get into Bitcoin and interact with Bitcoin, and maybe you don't like this, is they're just going to buy some Bitcoin or save in some Bitcoin, take that Bitcoin into cold storage, and go live their life. And I think for most people, that is probably the best advice that they can have, is just like, hey, just save your hard-earned cash, your hard-earned profits in Bitcoin, and go live your life. We're still in this era right now where we are just so obsessed with Bitcoin that we go on Twitter to conversate. It's our community square. We think that the conversation on Twitter is the entire conversation happening in the Bitcoin ecosystem, and that just is not the case. I think what we did learn, minus everything else that I said on the beginning of the show, but that a lot of people really did get caught up on social media and think that this is the entirety of the Bitcoin ecosystem communicating on Twitter. And as it turned out, and as I've been saying for a while, we are all in echo chambers right now. So this is why I always say, hey, at the end of the show, like, look, guys, I'm obsessed with Twitter. I'm on Twitter all day, every single day, but it's also kind of my job so that I can give you guys the news, keep you updated on stuff. For most people, you probably don't need to do that. Just save in Bitcoin, take your Bitcoin into custody, whether that is, a multi-vendor, multi-key, if you're hardcore about it, or if you want some security, multi-sig setup, a bit key, or if you're just like, you know what, I'm just going to do a single sig with a password. For the majority of people, it's just save in Bitcoin, store that Bitcoin, however you think is best for you, obviously the trade-offs, and then go and live your life. We'll be here being obsessed on Bitcoin Twitter, updating you guys, keeping you up to date on all the news. But that's why I always end the show like, hey, guys, there's a lot more in life that's worth doing than just sitting on Twitter and arguing with people. You know, like getting healthy, calling your loved ones, eating good, eating good, enjoying your life and saving in Bitcoin. Because as we can tell, we are still in the SOV aspect of Bitcoin. We still need to see our purchasing power increase. And yes, if you want to use that Bitcoin, go for it. I'm not going to stop you from using Bitcoin. I think it's money as well. But I think that is one of the little kernel of nuggets that we all learned or should have learned over the weekend, is that the conversation on Twitter is not the entirety of the conversation around Bitcoin. There's people that aren't on Bitcoin Twitter that do have huge economic weight in the system. There are some long-term Bitcoin holders that aren't on Twitter that have just been holding Bitcoin for 12 years. And they don't even know what we're arguing about, but they're like, hey, I'm a Bitcoiner. I know my Bitcoin's backed up. I'm good to go. So I'm just going to end it on that. Let's just remember that the conversations we're having on Twitter, it's not real life, okay? Just put the phone down. Put the Twitter down. Go enjoy some life. There is a big life outside of Twitter, okay? And I love Twitter. It's my favorite social media platform. I'm on it all day. I'm pretty sure if I looked at my phone settings, actually, here, we'll do it. I'll do it for you before I sign off. Because it's funny, on what was it, on Friday, I was just sitting here kind of shooting the shit with you guys. And it seemed like you guys enjoyed that, just kind of being a little more transparent. Okay, so this is just today. All right, so my what's this on phone metrics? My device time just for today. I've been on my phone for 3.5 hours, and an hour and 45 minutes of that was on Twitter. Okay. Here, now we go back. My daily average roughly is 6 hours on my phone, and about 4 hours of that is on on Twitter. So, hey, this is coming from someone that is obsessed with Twitter. But you probably don't need to do that. Actually, this is coming from someone that uses Twitter for their job, but for most of you guys, you probably shouldn't be spending 4 hours on Twitter, okay? Final advice for the day. Anyways, on that note, dude, put the phone down, put the Twitter down, get outside, get your 10K steps in, eat good, work out, get some sun, call your loved ones, of course. Saving some Bitcoin and taking the cold storage. On that note, guys, I will see you tomorrow at 12:40 p.m. Eastern time. Okay? Peace out. I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.